Hello students, we have Parul with us today and Parul is soon going to be teaching you quadratic equations. So Parul, tell me, what are we going to be studying in this chapter?
Basically, quadratic equations is one of the the earliest chapter that we start with in mathematics when we start for 11th class.
Okay.
Basically, it is in this chapter we have looked at the various properties of a quadratic equation and its roots, the basis that is, and after that we proceed to the properties of its discriminant which has many applications later on, and then we use the quadratic equation to solve all other sorts of rational expressions, because we know the various formulas and rules of quadratic equations in details once, and then we also look at the graph of a quadratic equation, which later can be used in conic sections also.
Okay.
And basically quadratic equation, so we also use this chapter in this is a basic chapter that actually has some use in all the other chapter of mathematics
That we're going to be studying.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me, when students are studying this chapter, what are the mistakes that they make?
See, basically, quadratic equation does not have much of a theory in itself.
Okay.
So, due to that reason, in competitive examinations, you'll less find questions which have typical use of quadratic equations only. Okay, it has a hidden application in topics like sequence series, trigonometry, conic sections, etc. So, a common mistake that children do is, instead of practicing for hours for this chapter only, it's better to mix it with other chapters and do questions which involve both. And moreover, when in exam, it's important. Practice is very important because you need to able to get that idea where you can use the properties of discriminant, because there are many questions where you may not be able to find that you actually were supposed to use properties of quadratic equations, and had you used it, your question would have been solved earlier.
Okay, alright. So
Exactly.
this is what we need to be careful
Exactly.
about.
So basically, wherever the topics that you're doing, okay, so using quadratic equations and properties of discriminant and all much longer, they basically reduce the time involved.
So it's a tool to make other things
Exactly.
Tell me this, like what fascinates you about quadratic equations? Like what's interesting about it?
See, quadratic equation is just like differential equation. Okay, it is one topic that has a varied number of uses in mathematics, in physics also. Okay, so basically it has applications everywhere. But one thing that you see, like just throwing a ball in the air, firing a missile, or many such things like that. We have our equations of gravitation and of the Newton's laws of motion. Those all can be solved using this quadratic equation. So basically, when the firing of missiles or rockets, when they are the scientists going to a broader level, when they are to send it to some satellites or something. Okay, so basically, you can just calculate the exact height, the desired time there.
And you use quadratic equations for these. That's
Exactly.
the idea.
After
So
you
it's
get the laws of physics, you use quadratic equation to solve to get all those quantities.
Alright. As an interesting application, you guys should also know that if the chapter complex numbers as such begins to an extent with a quadratic equation which you're trying to solve, where they tell you find the solution of x square plus 1 is equal to 0. And so you can also say to an extent that the concept of complex numbers actually started from the roots of quadratic equation to an extent.
When we have a discriminant less than 0, that basically gives us complex roots.
Complex roots, exactly. So now that you've found something interesting about quadratic equations as such, let's jump into the problems and solve them.
Exactly, and look at the theory and the questions.
Alright.